Hello, welcome back to the Data Privacy Lawyer. It's Funmi, the principal attorney at the firm speaking. Today's review, we're going to be looking at some AI terms. So the AI terms for today are related to an organization called class. Now these terms, interesting. The name of this document is Artificial Intelligence Use Terms and Notifications. Okay, we've been presented with the cookie banner. I'm going to decline. I want to quickly take a look at the solutions they have. It seems here that they have customers use class to power virtual live learning. So it's some type of learning product. That's really important to review because understanding the product helps me as a reviewer and as a privacy lawyer to be able to provide good advisory to my clients. And one of the first questions that I generally ask when I am doing reviews and providing or creating documentation for clients is I always ask, what products and services do you have? And in which geographies do you operate? Because that will influence the terms that you put on your public facing documents, which is what we do on this YouTube channel. So we can see here that they have the virtual classroom for learning and development. So there's two immediate questions I have in my mind. Is the learning and development for children, right? We already know that there are very specific ways in which children's personal data can be processed. If it's not for children, what type of information is being processed enabled to provide this virtual classroom, okay? Because there's very specific ways in which records related to students can be processed. There's different federal laws that are associated with processing of children's data and processing of records when it comes to learning, right? Educational related industries. Okay. The AI use and notifications document these terms apply to all products and services offered by Class Technologies. So in order for me to be able to review this properly, if I was this person's privacy lawyer, they would need to list all their products and services because those will influence what the terms can say, right? And its affiliates and divisions and contain important disclosures, notifications, and disclaimers to which the customer licensing or purchasing any of the products and or services and your users will be subject to, right? So this is really good. I love that there is a sentence here that identifies scope. When you have a privacy lawyer that is helping you draft your public facing documents, whether it's your terms, your notice, your policies, or any other privacy documentation that you provide to the public, it's really important that you answer a lot of different questions. My intake form is very extensive because in order for me to give good advice, I need to be able to understand what exactly is going on. The other note that I wanted to make quickly is the fact that these use terms and notifications are effective April 10, 2024. Now we're in 2026 now, so essentially this is almost 2 years old. Now let me tell you a couple of reasons why I personally would find this to be a bit concerning. One, because has the solutions being offered by Class changed since this time, right? The second answer is, where is the products and services being offered? Because the laws may have changed in those geographies since April 10, 2024. We already know in the United States that since 2024, there have been a lot of US state privacy legislation that have come out. And those generally will affect the products and services being sold if it is in fact that Class sells its products in the US. Now, this is a .com site, so I presume that the solutions are being sold in the United States. If that is in fact the case, these terms should be reviewed in order for the business to be able to confirm that it's still compliant and it's still offering terms that are consistent with its obligations in those jurisdictions, right? So what does that mean in simpler terms? It means that even if the solutions offered by Class have not changed, the laws in the geographies where it's being offered have definitely changed, which means that the terms need to be reviewed periodically to ensure that whatever the law is saying for the products and services needs to be reflected in the terms that this business is asking its consumers to sign up for. And that's what that means. So generally, any public facing document needs to be reviewed periodically to align with, one, the geographies where its tools are being offered, and two, to make sure that it's still compliant with the laws. And this doesn't just apply to privacy laws, right? There are lots of laws that change on a frequent basis, and there's lots of different influences on the terms that can be offered by an organization, to include things that are becoming more popular in the United States, like executive orders that influence some restricted transfers of personal data, right? If you are a business that operates in that space, you're not just looking at legislation, you're looking at guidance that's coming out from regulatory bodies. You're looking at executive orders that are coming out from the executive branch in the United States. All of these political influences may have an impact on your business, which is why the terms that you provide to your customers need to be reflected of that, and it need to be reviewed on a more frequent basis, particularly when it comes to artificial intelligence. Okay? By using the products and services or selecting I accept to any class AI consent requests, or agreeing to the terms. Okay, I'm just going to read the sentence and then explain my thoughts. By using the products and services or selecting I accept to any class AI consent requests, or agreeing to the terms of the agreement, you acknowledge and accept this AI use term and agree to be bound by its terms. I want to talk about this sentence because there's a very explicit way that consent must be given in some geographies. It has to be freely given. It has to be unambiguous. Now, this sentence I just read, I accept to any class AI consent requests, that doesn't infer or read to me that it's unambiguous. What exactly are we consenting to, right? This just says any, I find the terminology here to be very broad. I don't know the geographies where this is being offered. When I do these reviews, I look at things from a global spectrum because most clients are not just targeting one geography. These solutions, the learner solutions, I presume that class is open to offering its solutions on a global spectrum. Let's say, for example, a customer in Latin America decides they want to upskill and reskill and their employees, right? And class is then going to draft a request for proposal for this customer in Latin America. Or let's say, for example, class gets a request for proposal from a European school, right? We're looking at every geography. When it comes to data protection is not exclusive in the country where you're headquartered. It's not exclusive to where you decide to have your subsidiary and affiliates. It's based on whether or not you meet the threshold in those countries. And a lot of privacy legislation, the threshold is that you are processing personal data in those geographies. That's generally the uses. Now, there's nuance in some geographies. Sometimes the threshold is much more broad. Like for PIPL, which is in China, that's the data protection law in China. The requirements or threshold is far more broad than just having residence in China, right? So when I look at these reviews, I'm looking at it from a global spectrum, okay? The way in which consent must be obtained is very specific in some geographies. So this sentence may be problematic in some geographies. Now, without knowing everywhere that class offers its solution, it may be that the geographies where the solution is being offered, this sentence is okay. All right. Please note, if consent is not given when prompted, you will be removed from the class session. I think this is another very interesting sentence from a privacy perspective, because one of the requirements for consent in some geographies is consent should be just as easy to withdraw as it was given. Is that consistent with this sentence here? Selecting I accept to the request and then also withdrawing here. The AI use terms are effective immediately upon the effective date of your agreement or your use of the products and services. Now, without reading the agreement, I wouldn't know if the provisions in this terms and notification is consistent with the agreement. All documentation has to be read consistently by your privacy counsel because all of them have implications on privacy. These AI terms are not read exclusively. We can see here that they're read in association with the agreement that a potential customer is signing up for. Now, they've given some definitions. Let's look at data. Our favorite word means all data submitted and or generated by you and your users in connection with the use of AI features and services, including all content. I'm interested in what the content is. We already know that it's an AI that provides learning and development. So there's definitely going to be, at a minimum, the name of who the learner is. I know that for a fact. We've got material, IP, and similar addresses. I want to talk a little bit about this. Now, what some customers are not familiar with is the term personal data. It doesn't just look at what traditionally known to be personal data, like name and email address. Anytime there is an identifier that could identify an individual. It constitutes personal data, and an IP address can be identifiable to an individual, which is why it's listed here, right? Call and meeting records, messages and account information and settings. Okay, then they've also provided a definition of generative AI and then who the user is. Now, this is very interesting. I had mentioned this at the beginning of the review. The user means you, any of your employees, students, right? There is very specific federal legislation that influences the privacy of students in the United States, which should be accounted for in the terms, right? And in how class processes personal data. We know that personal data is definitely going to constitute data because we've already identified at a minimum IP addresses are there, call and meeting recording, and account information, which is probably like a username and password, right? And a username and password constitute personal data. I just wanted to address that because a lot of businesses are now using AI at a minimum within the organization in some capacity, whether it is that they're procuring some type of solution like this or they are creating their own AI internally. There is definitely an overlap and review that should be conducted as it pertains to personal data. So I hope you enjoyed this simple review. If you like these reviews, subscribe to my channel and I will see you in another review.